Hey, folks, for episode 58 of the Rental Roundtable, we had on Garrett Schemmel. He is the equipment data guy with over 10 years of experience with equipment data. He was at Equipment Watch. He's built his own software products around how do you take the rental world we all love and package it up to analytics and data. Currently, the CEO of IO Labs outside the space, but as you all know, rental gets in your blood. So we talked about a lot of what's happening in the equipment data segment. So started in 2011, but we're looking at physical books that were sent in the mail every quarter to 2017, ERP starting to integrate with some of the data providers to now the cloud-based model. And let's talk about the future. The buzzword now is AI and how that's going to impact analytics and data and how rental companies today can be using AI to understand their business, understand the rental side of things, understand their analytics better. If you like data, if you like to geek out on this stuff, and you like equipment, you guys will enjoy this episode. All right, everyone, welcome to the Rental Roundtable, episode number 58. Got my friend Garrett Schemmel on. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks, Kyle.
Yes, the equipment data guy. That's the phrase for today. That's how we're going to position you. Obviously, both here in Atlanta. I was looking on LinkedIn. We have 123 mutual connections. I don't know many people. That would put you probably top 10 people I know, at least knowing the same people, right? So the technology people and the equipment people, like that's sort of your thing and sort of my thing too. So we have a lot of people we could talk about. A lot of people know you and also know me. So a lot of mutual connections here.
That's awesome. Let's crank that number up. Let's get to know more people.
That's right. So for today's episode, I want to talk about like how rental companies can use data to better organize their broader or maybe more specific equipment universe. So before we get into that, I always like to hear people's origin stories. Every episode starts this way. Obviously, here we are in summer 2025, both here in Atlanta, talking about equipment data. Tell me about your background. You obviously went to Georgia Tech and sort of how you kind of navigated through equipment and the data side. Tell me a little bit about your career history.
Yeah, for sure. Went to school to make stuff. Was in the packaging world of all things. Put the 2x6 fridge pack on the shelf. That you guys probably all use every day. Decided to go to grad school to beat the designer out of me. Went to MBA school and came out of that in a startup called Ranger Up, which is still out there today. We grew it to multi-million, sold to private equity, and then right after that, had to get serious having a kid, and got a job in a large company called Penton, about 2,000 people. And that's where I really got exposure to the data world and the equipment world, and that's, let's say, 2011. And so at that point, I took over a business called Equipment Watch. So Equipment Watch was at the time based out of San Francisco. I took it over, and boss said the next day, by the way, please move it to Atlanta from San Francisco. And wow, completely rehired the business, but it was an awesome experience. So for those that don't know Equipment Watch, it grew to be a business that serves 3,000 customers. Was there, grew the business from 2011 to right before the pandemic hit. We'll talk about that. But an amazing experience. About 3,000 customers, the largest kind of data portfolio in the equipment space. Really a pure play intelligence business, the only one. Still to this day that only does intelligence. There is data in the equipment universe now, but it's usually now connected and part of companies that also want you to sell their equipment to them. So there might be some bias there. But yeah, so took over Equipment Watch, multiple data products, what equipment costs to own and operate per hour, used by thousands of contractors, helps them get paid back. Could talk all day about equipment costing. It's probably the most misunderstood concept. It's a financial accounting concept. It's not a market benchmark concept, right? So there's 24 things that go into it. The age of the equipment matters. What you paid for it matters. So many things go into it. So knowing your equipment cost per hour is almost one of the most misunderstood things in the equipment universe, to be honest. And since construction and equipment utilization, right? It's a cost plus model by definition. If you don't know what your costs are, you may be losing money. And that's actually one of the most important things in understanding equipment costs is making sure you're actually profitable. So also known as the Run Rate Blue Book, that product, we had a valuation. That product was about 40 years old. Another valuation product. It was the first in market. It was like the Kelly Blue Book of construction equipment from the 1960s. what stuff was worth. Obviously, everyone has an opinion. That's much less of a objective product. Um, so I love talking equipment valuations. So we built the most downloaded equipment intelligence report called the Equipment Watch Market Report. May still be around these days. Tracked 12 million assets at the point of transaction in multiple asset markets. What equipment rents for? We're the only source of advertised rates. So we aggregated public data from over 400 rental companies, so people could understand what's the maximum essentially I should rent for.
Mhm.
So rental companies listening to this, obviously, you quite a few invest in the Rouse Analytics service, which is the lowest or the most that you should charge, right? It's kind of the bottom end of the market. Don't charge less than this, or you'll be less
Mhm.
than your competition. So if you have access to the benchmark from EquipWatch, that's the top end of the rental range, and then obviously Rouse would be the bottom end, and in there is your rental zone, right? Which is a great way to think about it. So really cool product. Use it also to help governments understand. Quite a few governments around the United States. Connecticut, for one, has an audit privilege, and any reimbursement request that you do on equipment rentals, you've got to make sure they actually have to do a benchmark and market nearby. Um, and then specs are incredibly hard product. And then serial number decoding for the kind of the used market for trade-ins and that kind of thing. But awesome product portfolio. Just a lot of fun. Launched the first and only equipment intelligence user conference called Traction in 2017 and 18. Had 100 cutting edge companies come to Atlanta. Um, yeah. Josh Nichols still lives. Josh, if you're listening, I would love to do another one. He says it was the best thing ever.
Traction.
Sure, that's yeah.
Well, I was talking to Josh this morning, by the way. So Easter egg, Josh. If you listen to this, call me. I'll buy you lunch. Uh,
It's not a podcast if you don't drop the name Josh Nichols, right?
that's right. You got Ellie Vigil, Josh Nickel. You got to hit the power hitters here. Uh, so now you're out of the industry, right? You're CEO
Yeah.
of IL Labs. Tell me about that briefly. Obviously, get back to the equipment side here. Tell me what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, uh, to be fair, 2020, 2022, swung the bat at ownership to all you independent rental companies out there. I deeply respect you. Launched a startup called Iron Up, which is to help contractors manage their rented fleet. So they have all these
Mhm.
great fleet management platforms for managing own rental companies. You guys are doing a great job increasing the size of the rental slice in the utilization pie, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
more asset hours are rented than owned these days.
Mhm.
Bad timing was like many of you was at ConExpo in 2020, right when we were launching our business. And so we had some bad timing, but got recruited in 2022 to run this a software business called IL Labs. We help I moved way I think about it is I moved from active construction phase to post construction phase. And so now
Mhm.
I help the building operators turn building data into insights, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, a lot of people say rental gets in your blood, and you've been out of rental a few years, but you're back on the Rental Roundtable, so you may be back formally at some point in the industry. We're going to talk very specifically around the future of data and equipment rental here in a little bit, but I just want to. I'm interested in your broad views, right? Because you have sort of become, not in your current role, but I've known you back in 2020. Um, when I think of equipment data, like you were the guy that came to mind, and you were doing that for over a decade. I'm curious your view of the world in 2011 when you're first getting into it and seeing how that's changed over a 10-year period. There's a narrative that like rental companies aren't using data enough, they're not using technology enough. Maybe that's true or not true. Like I guess like where was the market in 2011? Where is it now in terms of adoption of analytics, data? Where are we? Because you've been all over the place in other industries. You could kind of compare rental to other industries. Where does rental really stack up in adoption of data analytics?
Yeah, for sure. So we had a very basic kind of rental benchmark product. It was a book in
Mm.
2011.
There you
Um,
go.
produced quarterly, so you could tell how valuable those intelligence.
Was it like a yellow phone book that was this thick and you could hit someone with it?
It was called the AED Graham books. Oh man, you can still Google it, but obviously at some point Equipment Watch bought and acquired it
Yeah.
from AED, the Association of Equipment Distributors. But it's called the Green Book. Yeah, so I mean that's kind of the reference point in 2011, right? And Rouse hadn't launched yet. That was 2012, 13, something like that.
So it was like
They
it was like analog book that you
It was a
got
book.
quarterly in the mail. Open up. Let me see what the rates were for this particular category class.
That was it.
2011.
2011. Yeah, man. I'm feeling old these days. But it was yeah, very much a compliance product. So the idea of rental of CI, competitive intelligence, to throw some vocabulary out, it just didn't exist. Market intelligence, also a phrase that's popular now,
Yeah.
didn't exist in the rental space. Non-existent was where we were in 2011.
Mm.
I think there was through 2012 to 2017, there was really the rise of content marketing that was data driven. So I think the best way to kind of get an ecosystem, the market, to care more about data is to make sure that like some basic version of it is accessible. And so that was the rise of the Kumwash Market Report. Rouse also had a great report that was very rental centric. We catered to a broader part of the market at the time. But I think, when you look at like the classic rental ERP systems, those are the traditional players on-prem. APIs didn't exist. We built the first consumable API, like market intelligence API, around 2017 for QuickWatch, so that anyone that wanted to build, rental software could do it. We integrated in the 2017 to 18 timeframe. We integrated with almost all the major rental platforms, so they could automate a lot of workflows. So specs, serial number decoding, there's just a lot of features, taxonomies, right? Like one of the worst things you can do in software is let people type stuff in.
Mhm.
So, I mean, structured data is the enemy of insights. And so, this really interesting book to the rise of software, the rise of cloud software. And then really, I think in the past 5 years, 5, 6 years, there's been a big rise of structured data and appreciation for good data in the systems. Because if Power BI came around, right? You want Power BI to be pretty. You can't call something a truck, a white truck, an F-150, and
Yes.
pivot that, because you're not going to have good insights, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. To like simplify, 2011, you're getting a phone book in the mail. 2017, starting to plug in some of the ERPs, the rental systems to send data back and forth. 2022, you started getting more structured data where then you could say, okay, let's start to compare trends over time, maybe even with competitors across markets. Unstructured data is the enemy of analytics, right? Uh, where are we now? Where is it moving? What's the future? Okay, yeah, it's actually crazy that like 14 years ago it was books, and like it's actually in some sense amazing that we've actually moved that quickly in this period of time, right? Like where are we now? Where's the next 5 years look like? What's the future of data in the equipment world?
I think it's going to be driven by the cloud applications, the ERP systems that you guys are all using, going more and more cloud. I mean, I couldn't help but advocate for cloud-based alternatives so that you can, which is really moving to a model, right? A maintenance model as a buyer of software, of saying, I don't want like one update a year. I would like updates weekly, monthly.
Hmm.
Give me the good
Hmm.
stuff. So really it's about, I think there's got to be a rise of a desire for constant improvement and acceptance of constant improvement, and not worrying about it changing your workflow. Um, I would still love to see a lot more market intelligence in the space. I'd love data structuring to come around. So one thing I'm really excited about was the ARA launching their taxonomical standards last year.
Hmm.
That was done in some form in 2012, specifically not equipment taxonomies, but for metric standards calculations in 2012, 2013. That's what allowed for really Rouse benchmarking to arrive, was everyone agreeing to how to calculate something.
Hmm.
And so I think the taxonomical standards are really great. They're going to let benchmarking within a fleet happen first, right? So if you're not consistent with what you're tagging, everything that comes in, it's very easy to type different things, right? So using taxonomical standards, Equipment Watch has a taxonomical standard. The Association of Equipment Manufacturers has a standard, although it's much simpler and pretty much used for their own internal benchmarking at the OEM level. So there's two, three, four taxonomies. in the total equipment ecosystem, obviously specifically in rental, the ARA has pioneered one, which of course has some asset classes that are more applicable to rental as opposed to heavy civil, dirt, or earth moving equipment, that kind of stuff, which is typically less rental. At least some people think that way.
Yeah, I mean, on your, kind of go 2025, the cloud model. That's we sometimes hear people say, "No, I want a server, I want to look at it," but that's not really what we hear very often. And I would just, what I'm amazed at is even in the 5 years I've been in this industry, how quickly expectations have changed. Like, to I'm okay with whatever, it's always been done this way. To like, no, I want the latest and greatest. Like, it needs to be, cloud based, mobile friendly, fast, and that is like amazing how quickly people's expectations have been shifting. Like, and it puts a lot of pressure on the rental softwares to deliver. Like, and ultimately, it's where we live, but we have something to do every day, right? But you're talking about even the future, right? These taxonomies. The ARA set program launched about a year and a half ago. Josh Nickel headed that up now. John Jingwinet's working on that as a way to standardize across all the ARA members, the thousands of ARA members. How do we know as an individual rental business, how am I performing relative to my peers, right? And obviously Rouse offers that. And there's a price point to that. A lot of the larger groups use Rouse. But it's interesting when we talk about like a taxonomy standard. Well, you have the Rouse standard and you have now the ARA standard, and you have all these. We still haven't arrived as an industry like a gold standard of like, this is actually what we call a category class, and these are the pieces of equipment within that. And there's some debate. I don't think as an industry we've gotten there yet. I don't think we as an industry we've said like, no, this is our metric system. This is how we measure units, and this is exactly how we do it. I think your people are moving in that direction, but I don't think we've gotten there. My hope is over the next 5 years, like, do we start to coalesce around uh, a gospel, a source of truth? We say, no, this is actually how you call your piece of equipment. This is how we can standardize it. Do you see that world coming where we all sort of agree that this is the one way to do things?
Standards are difficult, right? So I think there's a lot of reasons why someone could push back on a standard. Could be if I have 60% of the market in my platform, if I have my own standard, if I agree to an outsourced standard, I may feel like I lose some control. So just as someone that's been with some time on the software, the subscription business model operator side, understand that sometimes you have to think through your own selfish business lens. So I think that's a headwind to standard
Yeah.
normalization. But I just unquestionably when they happen, so like for example, there's in the equipment ecosystem, the Associated Equipment Management Professionals in 2014 put out their telematics standards, right? So I was in the room when fleet managers at guys like Walsh and Skanska, they came out and said like, hey, I'm not gonna log into a Deere platform or a Cat platform. Like, I need this all together. And that
Mm.
standard was powerful, and OEMs got behind it, right? It was a small association in the scheme of things, right? Smaller in terms of headcount. Doesn't A&P doesn't have the rental show, right? It doesn't have this massive gathering, but it was really powerful getting the industry to move. So my advice is to your audience, to the independent rental operators, if you want information and intelligence, go to the ARA. Share that expectation with the ARA, because the organization best capable of getting the standards out that you want is unquestionably the ARA. They are the ones that can do it. So um, more and more, there's so many different standards that could be put out. Uh, I would like to see just continued path towards that. A key part of obviously getting standards adopted is they have to be in the right place, and they have to be inside your customer's workflow. And so making them accessible to, Quipli's of the world. The economics of integrations are kind of weird, right? So like if it costs the area $1 to make something, they're going to want to recoup that theoretically. Who pays for it? And so to make standards happen, you have to keep the cost as low as possible, which again benefits the ARA, and just pushing them through and figuring out that economic model. That sounds like a silly thing, but passing through costs is a really big thing, especially at the industry level. You want something where, it's not a burden on the platform, guys like you
Mm.
guys.
Yeah, on the taxonomy side, even starting this from scratch 5 years ago, the first question we asked was like, can we integrate with something off the shelf? Like, where's the, like, in the automotive industry, there's these standards, there's taxonomies. Chrome data is one that you just
Auto,
plug
yeah.
into, right?
Mhm.
And that worked. And we started the previous company, Clutch, and we just plugged right in. And the first question we asked, and everyone was like, "There's no standard." So we started building our own, and Point Rentals got their own, and everyone's got their own system that they built. And it's almost I don't want to be negative here, but it is like almost like a tragedy of the commons situation where like it would cost all of the individual rental softwares money to move towards this new version, and the benefit necessarily isn't there. I think what needs to happen, I hope, and it's starting, there's momentum, right? Is ARA members start demanding this, and ARA says, "Hey, here's the new standard. Everybody, if you want, I'm just hypothetically, right? But if you want to come to the ARA show next year, you need to be plugged into our taxonomy, right? And like start to sort of push this forward." The reality is that would be good for the rental softwares. It'd be good for the rental companies. Can you imagine the analytics you can start to provide if you can then, of the 10,000 rental companies, really be able to say, you log into your rental software, how are you actually performing? And you know the data is accurate, and everything just flows better, right? It's just better for everyone. The challenge is how do you get that to happen? And it does sound like you sort of need like an organization to really to push this forward. And it seems like things are moving that direction. I hope it would go faster. 2011 we had paper phone books. Progress, right?
It really is the economics. It really is. So like, I know there's the ARA set. I mean, if the ARA is here on this call, I would of course advise them to get it into an API form. But of course, that starts to get like, can
Who pays for that?
associations build APIs? Is that a thing? I don't know if any association has really built an API. So I don't know. I mean, I think we need some great benefactor, someone to swoop down from the rental gods and subsidize all this, right? Pay for that middle technology piece is the hard part. It's that technology piece so that guys like you can do this, or because it's so for the audience, it's like a flat file. It's like imagine like an Excel file with columns in it, and that is the product put out um, on
It's
day
not
one.
it's not hard. It's not hard. It like what you said, it's economic, it's the buy-in. It's like if we said, "Hey, here's our Quipli taxonomy, this is how the whole world needs to work." Well, some rental companies say, "I don't want to do it that way." And then that's sort of the challenge is there's these different things. I think Rouse has probably done the best job lately of that. And they if you want to use the Rouse service, you have to use the way that they've set it up. And the Rouse service is powerful enough that they've been able to get people to do it. So it really is around leverage. Like what is I think what people miss is what the value is. Like there's a tremendous value to being on a standard taxonomy. All people see is the headache, right? So if there's a way to like pull forward some of that value and show what it can do, that could also sort of maybe expedite some of this.
What makes it all super nerdy here, but what makes it all even harder is the lack of a federal standard. So through another business next to QuipWatch that I ran called Price Digests, plural, an S on the end. It was where QuipWatch focused on off highway. It was on highway, over the road, depending on who you're talking to, plus some other things like marine and boat. But it for our best product, our biggest product was a truck VIN decoding API, and it was amazing because all these federal standards were there. We were able to build, an API that was incredibly high performance. Give us 100 VINs, we would decode 99 of them effectively. At QuipWatch, we also had a serial number decoding API, the first in the market in 2017 and 18. We literally took a book like this, right? Range-based rules, and turned it into an API. But at the time, we could never get it anywhere near 99%.
Mm.
And so if again, if we none of us want necessarily Uncle Sam inside of our business, but there are costs to lack of regulation at times. So federal government in your can really help with normalization for sure.
So one of the things you mentioned earlier was just kind of switching topics again was equipment costing and how that's one of the most important things rental companies need to be thinking about, like cost per hour. When you hear about rental metrics, people will ask us, "Hey, I want to see your reporting." What they really mean is they want to see fleet utilization, time utilization, dollar utilization, some ROI numbers. It's pretty simple calculations. And, there's like an 80/20 rule where like, well, that actually probably gets you pretty far. But like, what are some of the other metrics rental companies should be looking at or be thinking about on a regular basis to help understand how their fleet and how their rental company is performing?
That's a great question. I've had the chance to sit in peer groups and talk about this with a lot of rental companies. I mean, I think you mentioned the top two, right? Dollar utilization and asset utilization, fleet utilization. Not necessarily metrics, but important concepts. When I say metric, it may not be a financial KPI like the ones we just mentioned, but really understanding your equipment cost per hour. So it's services like Equipment Watch have the academic model. You can go in, it's called the internal charge rate. It's something that your customers, your most professional customers, especially in the heavy civil side, where their business is equipment utilization, like they really know this. So if you're going to, I mean, personally, if I'm having a conversation with a prospect, a really smart prospect, I'd ask them, what's your equipment cost per hour, right? And if you can drive them, if you can give them a lower equipment cost per hour, they should all day long go with you, right? So there's a lot of things that go into it. It's the cost per hour is the ownership cost, which are usually from fixed costs, depreciation, and then there's operating costs, right? So a service like Equipment Watch can give you some great standards, some great benchmarks. It requires you to have good books. Like, what's your cost of insurance? How are you allocating your cost of your costs? I just think, listen, I just think equipment costing is just so critical. It's so critical. And to the point where, like, just to show how important this is, if you go to your customer side, right? Again, go to the heavy civils of the world and the site contractors, they won't share with each other what their cost per hour is because that goes into the bid, right? Like it's like number one on intellectual property is don't share our benchmarks because so anyways, it's yeah, just I could talk all day about equipment costing.
Well, do you like what percentage of rental companies, if you just have to guess here, understand their equipment cost per hour?
10%.
Yeah, I think it's 10%. And the reason I can say this is people aren't asking or talking about it. I never really hear about it, right? To ask the obvious question out loud, I'm a rental company, never thought about equipment cost per hour. Sounds like another thing I need to look at. Why? Why does it matter?
It matters because it helps you understand your ideal point of disposition as well. 2018, we built the first disposition product on the planet. We built we built concepts for it. We also built the first residual value software on the planet. Right? What is my asset going to be worth in 4 years? But the on the owner side, right, or on your customer side, there's this concept of a sweet spot of disposition. It's where simply the ownership costs and the operating costs intersect. After that point, your operating costs surpass your ownership costs, and academically, that's the ideal time to do it. We had some really interesting data that because we were tracking millions of assets in the market per year, by asset class, we could see disposition humps, right? So we could see, for example, for scissor lifts, there's a huge disposition point at age equals 3, and then there's another one at age equals 8. So there's just some disposition behavior, especially for the big guys, right? The top 3, the top 2 that show how they want to just they have because they have super constant utilization and they have contracts and leasing terms, right? That first year 3 disposition point is the end of the lease, right? That goes back to remarketing, right, at the OEM. But knowing when should I get rid of something? When have I held something too long? Organizations typically, because they don't know how to answer that question scientifically, they'll say, "Oh, we've always been doing it. So we always get rid of it at X hours, or we get rid of it at X age," right? But knowing that is really key. It does take. It's a different thing. It's a different thing for rental companies. And there's a lot of things that admittedly go into that, right? Like if you're in an environment where if you're in Alaska and you just have to have uptime, you might get rid of things at 24 months. You might get rid of things at the end of initial warranty, right? Because you just can't do it. Like then there's the whole rent to own versus rent to rent, right? Like if I'm a Komatsu dealer, I'm a rent to own model. I get rid of things not based off of any disposition decisions, cost decisions. I get rid of it when the OEM warranty is gone. I have to sell it at 12 months, basically, right?
We've talked to a lot of rail companies, probably at this point, thousands over the years. And, so we see the top elite performers and everyone in between, right? And what it seems to me is the top groups, what they view rental, and I want to hear if you could agree or disagree, but they view their business, they are asset companies, they are data companies, and their whole game is figuring out how do we buy equipment at the right price? How do we sell at the right price in the right time? How do we price our equipment appropriately? They think all day about pricing and data and assets and financing and customer service. All this stuff matters, but at the end of the day, think heavily on the financial side of things. A lot of the way the car dealerships think about, they're very financial operated. But I don't know if that's necessarily the norm, right? You work with a lot of the top groups based on the products you were looking at, but a lot of people sort of I think it's time to sell this. I think it's time to buy it. And there's not a lot of rigor necessarily. And it's not anyone's fault. Like the tools don't always exist, right? We can't even agree on the right taxonomy right now, right? What advice would you give rental companies who are thinking of hearing this conversation and they go, okay, Garrett's the equipment data guy. Uh, what do I do about this? Is this important? How do I even sort of move into this new world?
Man, I mean, get your hands on intel. Call people that can help you. Guys like me, guys like Quitwatch, guys like other companies that can help you. Um, and just understand the fundamental concepts and start there. Just understand first. Plot on a sheet of paper. Okay, when was all the assets that we've sold? When did we sell them? How many hours were on them? Right? What time of year was it? Just look for your bias, right? Do you understand when your organization, obviously if you're small, one location, two locations, this is not an issue, but just ask around the optimal time to buy and begin to get the data. The cost data is important. Having a good market data source is important. Um, knowing where the bias is, right? Like if you're going into Orlando in January and that's when you're buying or selling, it's a good time to sell. It's a bad time to buy traditionally. Typically there's a 10 to 20% premium on assets in Orlando in January, right? Just don't sell it because you always sold it that way. I guess it's always the advice. Don't do what you've always done.
Yes, the mindset gridlock is what we would call it, but it's always been done this way. We shouldn't change, and I just can't express enough how quickly this space is changing. Like the expectations are like rapidly accelerating. Part of which coming in here is AI. I'm sure you've thought a lot about it in your current job as a CEO. I had a CEO software peer group this morning, and that's the thing everybody's thinking about. Uh, how does that, it's coming, it's here, right? Whether we like it or not, this is the reality, right? I mean, how does AI play into equipment data? Like, how does that platform ultimately accelerate some of these things we're talking about?
That's a great question. I mean, and the answer is you can do things today. So I just happened to be at a meeting of 30 software company CEOs 2 weeks ago. And we had some kind of a special forces team come in that had been trying to crack the code on, what does AI mean to us and really what is it about? Is it revenue driving? Is it cost saving? What is it? I think today, to give some simple nuggets of possibility, number one, it's probably on day one an efficiency driver and thus a cost driver. Look at guys like Microsoft are doing, those that are actually are creating the tools. They're on the cutting edge because they are eating their own dog food. Microsoft laid off 6% of its workforce, 3,000 mostly developers. They figured out that for software developers, they can get anywhere from 20 to 30% more productivity out of them through copilots, right? Where if you haven't seen it, it's pretty amazing. It's code base. On the right, there's AI that actually anticipates the next thing you're going to write, and it writes it for you. And you hit tab, you say sure, or if not, you just don't accept it. It's pretty incredible. So on the software side, it's a big deal. But to the average rental company, do what I do. You're tired. Something just came in. You've got to interpret what it's all about. It's the end of the month. It could be the financials. You don't know what to do. Buy the $20 a month ChatGPT, cloud, whatever, Gemini service. They're all the same price. Buy that version because with the paid versions generally comes IP ownership for you. The free versions, you're the product. Upload that Excel file and just talk to it. Call it your analyst and ask it questions. Right? And export your data out of Quipli. Ask it what's going on, right? Kyle, we're all of us people in software. We're now understanding that it's probably an analyst as a service on day one. Mm-hmm. But to the rental operators out there, just embrace it. It's and use it. Use these LLMs, these large language models, these chat-based services. There's AI to nerds like you and me can mean something different and more specific. But use those tools. I mean, I in my organization, I have AI goals, AI requirements now, right? To the point where before we hire that next person, let's first find out, can we do it with AI? And AI will fill it fills the hardest information spots in the business. It fills that role that you always wanted, but you couldn't really get.
I mean, a lot of the top owners we talk to, they spend 30 minutes every morning, or at least once a week, going through their utilization numbers, tracking all of that, running reports. AI can do that in 30 seconds. And buy the $20 version. I use it all the time. And download your data, upload it, and start talking to it, asking questions. Hey, pretend, ask it, pretend you are my equipment rental analyst and you know
That's
everything
it.
about equipment rental, right? Now I'm going to ask you some questions like, where am I underutilized? Where should I change my prices? What should I be buying? Like all those questions, it's already smarter than us. And
100%.
that's off the shelf today. I think it's also on the onus of the rental softwares to be incorporating this quickly, right? Because I think there's also risk for the groups like us that if we just sort of sit on the sidelines and stay as a system of record, AI starts to eat into what you're doing and people start to go, why do I need a system of record? It's a commodity. I'm using all my AI is the power, right? AI is the juice. So it sounds like, I mean, you sort of indicating this, but in terms of hype here, is this a fad? Is this here to stay? Like, what's your view of it, particularly how it's going to impact rental companies and rental software over the next few years?
I think it's 100% here to stay. Again, if you think of it as like an efficiency driver slash cost saver on day one, honestly, the way I think about it is like in the context of that 30 business CEO conversation, right? It was like, oh, wow, we can lock massive efficiencies in how developers work or how teams do things.
Mm-hmm.
We're facing a unique once in a generation step function of efficiency. Just if you're to graph efficiency over time, it's going to, instead of a nice gentle slope, it's going to just go pop up 20%, but then it's going to flatline for a while again or incrementally slope. You have to decide if you're on that step curve or not, or if you're down below. So it feels like we're all sprinting ahead and being awesome, but the reality is if 9 out of the 10 of us get on that step curve, we're just at another level of competition. I just can't imagine being that company that doesn't get on the curve with everyone else. I think that's the biggest thing to take away is
Mm.
if you haven't touched AI, if you haven't touched the language models, if you haven't talked to them, if you haven't tried to ask them to do A, B, and C, and then find out they can do D, E, and F, and then I had the final acceptance a month ago that I've been surpassed as a human, and it was a weird feeling. But
I don't know.
yeah,
The same thing happened. I don't know what happened in the last month for me. My mindset totally shifted to like interesting, cool, probably here to like here yesterday. There's a meteor coming towards Earth. It's either going to take out the dinosaurs or it'll create a nice pool for us to swim in. But like it's happening, and like I think pretending it's not going to be here. There are some people who just aren't there, but I think a lot of people are there. Even rental companies are asking, like, "What are you doing around AI?" That was not a question 6 months ago, 3 months ago. People weren't asking. I don't know what's changing. I think people started using it more often and seeing the power of it.
you can use it to find prospects. Hey,
Yeah.
find 100 contractors with this revenue range within 3 miles of me. Boom. If you can get 100 prospects in 3 minutes and your competition takes a day to get 100 prospects through some other paid tool, right? You're already losing.
Hmm.
You're losing the sales battle, right?
On a separate note, Tidemark, their venture capital group, Dave Yuan there, he writes a lot of essays on vertical software and AI, and he wrote one yesterday, Garrett, you particularly like, but it's talking about how does a software company like a point of rental alert Quipli, how does that interact with AI in the future? And I don't think anyone knows. If you talk to 10 people, get 10 different answers. So I personally don't know either, but there's this idea you transform from a system of record to a system of action, right? So not
I
even
yeah.
if you read that article, you know what I'm talking about?
I've read about the evolution of everyone aspired to be a system of record forever, and now
Yes.
I've read that article. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's interesting.
I don't know. Is it right? I mean, I don't think anybody really knows. It's that things are changing so quickly. It's hard to know. I think biggest thing is embrace reality. It's moving. Try to learn. Try to engage in this. But like, if it is smarter than us today, like, what are jobs that aren't being done within rental companies that could be done? What are jobs that people don't like to do or aren't good at that can be done? Right? How do you
Absolutely.
use AI to improve the customer experience? Like, it's not about replacing jobs, although Anthropic CEO would say we're going to replace all white collar jobs within 0 to 3 years of experience in the next 2 years. Like that is in 20% unemployment. That's a view. I don't know about that, but I think there are a lot of cases where it can make rental companies way more efficient, way more effective. And I think if the industry as a whole can embrace this, I think it could be a boom for rental companies, right? Because it's a physical machine that has to go into the physical world to do physical tasks. And if you can make the operational cost center lower and more efficient, more effective, that's ultimately going to be good for rental companies. But your point, if 9 out of 10 adopt it, well, then the curve just becomes level, and that's now the new standard, right?
It
So,
will. Yeah, I mean, everyone's super excited about the let's integrate LLM capabilities, but How hard is that? It's $20 a month. I
Yeah.
mean, we're building some really cool things at our labs, our marketing team, and like structuring data and basic. I have a super data product bent on everything, obviously,
Yes.
but I love to give when I'm building a relationship with a future customer. I love to give, and so we're able to like. We've used AI. We use Google Alerts to for our own selfish benefit to for watch for new prospects for us, new properties, right? So when they're kind of announced, aggregate all of that using automation, and then we're like, holy cow, let's start to give this away after a certain point. Like, let's launch a new property database so that people can. So there's so many interesting ways to answer the question. Like, if someone needs the simplest guidance, what have you done poorly? What has been hard for you to do well? Write that list of things down and then go after that with AI.
I love that.
It usually fixes that.
It's that I mean, that's a probably a great place to wrap up here. It's we'll do another episode of the future in a few years to see how accurate our predictions were. I mean, I think we're both bullish that it's here. How it plays out, not sure. But I think to summarize it, you don't want to be that one out of the 10 groups that aren't moving forward on this, right? Because however this future shapes up, it's happening, and you'll be left behind, right? If you don't move there. So it's exciting time. Things are changing very quickly in the rental space, particularly on the technology side, like monthly almost at this point. So uh, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Final question I have, Garrett, sort of traditional question. Everyone sort of pauses because I don't know, but best career advice you've ever gotten. If you can't think of your best career advice you've ever gotten, but some solid business advice you've gotten that's helped shape your success and what you're doing today.
All right, let's answer the best career advice. I deeply believe in like if a leader needs something hard done, if it scares a lot of people, just say yes. I think one of the things I've been most surprised by in my career is people say, "Wow, you've done like so many amazing things." And like for example, I was able to run a business in my late 20s when I know a lot of people kind of in my software ecosystem now start 10 to 15 years later. So do whatever you can to get that massive experience as early as you can, and it's amazing how it compounds.
Hmm.
That's it.
Saying yes to the hard thing, gain the experience, figure it out, or fail, but you learn and you'll be better for the next time, right?
It's okay not to go straight in your career path.
Fair enough.
That,
Well, Garrett, thanks for coming on here. Josh, if you're listening and you listen and call me, I'll buy you lunch again. But Garrett, thanks for coming on. I know you for 5 years, the fellow Atlanta person here. So thanks again, Garrett, for coming on.
thanks, Kyle. Been a pleasure.